Hey guys, I finally got my hands on a set of Ohuhu markers. I've been after some of these for so long. The set that I went for to start with was the pastel set. So this is a pack of 48 colours plus a blender. You also get this little plastic bit at the back. This is just something that you stick behind your pages to prevent any bleed through with your markers. And of course you've got the little storage bag that it comes in. So I'm showing on camera some of the colours on the caps here. We will compare the cap colour with the actual colour swatch, the ink itself, shortly. But first of all, let's take a look at the barrel itself. So if I get one of the pens out here, one of the markers I should say, I really like the designs to these. Yes, all alcohol markers seem to be very similar. This has like silver text or silver branding on it, which I thought was pretty cool. I zoomed in here just to show that the lids actually do have this extra lip on them. That's just to stop them rolling away. Again, a lot of markers do have these. That is on both lids, and trust me, that comes in real handy when it's a rounded marker like this. So that's just a shot of a few of them together, broad tip at one side and brush at the other. So it's down to personal opinion, but I really like these markers. Again, they are similar to others. If we take a look at the actual nibs, these ones are the range that have brush at one side, which you can see there, and along the other side, like a lot of markers, we have the broad tip nib. We will talk about the nib types and the different ones available from the Ohuhu range a little bit later, and a quick comparison of what they look like with the caps on to off. I wanted to show what these look like next to some other alcohol markers I own as well. So from the top we have Spectrum Noir, Prismacolor Premier, Windsor Newton brush markers, the Ohuhu markers we've got here, Copic Ciao and Copic sketch markers. Just in case that is any use to anyone. We're going to zoom in on the nibs a little bit as well. I will say that the Spectrum Noir is a fine tip one that I've got here. So the chisel nib is relevant, but the smaller nib is obviously going to be a lot finer than the brush nibs of the other pens. If I zoom in on the chisel nibs here, you can see they are all very similar. Yeah, some of them have slightly different angles and thicknesses to them, but overall nothing to write home about. And I'd say the same is true with the brush nibs as well. All of these pens have very good quality brush nibs. Very similar size, some of them maybe a little bit spongier than others, but overall I really like all these. Moving on, let's get a colour swatch down for these. I tried to write the code or the number below each swatch, but you can see at the very beginning I already messed up a blue one. Typical. So just a reminder that this is the pastel set. These are pastel colours, 48 different colours, plus a colourless blender, which for some reason all marker companies feel like they must include. I tried to apply the ink a little bit thicker on the right hand side of each colour swatch so that you can see the range you can get. There is a decent amount of pinks, maybe purples and sort of peaches, oranges. You do get some greys and some blues. You have got a full range of course, but I feel like some of them were lacking a little bit, especially the greens. I also felt, and this was the biggest downside for me, that as a pastel set, a lot of these were too oversaturated, so a little bit too strong and bright in colour. Other people might disagree with me, maybe other people have a different opinion of what pastel colours are, but to me, pastel colours are usually quite pale. That being said, the colours themselves are very nice colours. I just think of pastel being a little bit paler, which it does have some of course. As well as that, there's a couple in there that I would say are the kind you would get in a marker skin tone set. All I'm doing here, by the way, is just showing the pen lid, the colour on the cap, compared to the colour swatch itself. Obviously this is going to look a little bit different depending on your lighting, but I tried my best to show it. So the pen lid is below the swatch so that you can see it a little bit clearer. Most of these were pretty accurate to be honest, but you never get all of them 100% in any marker set. For me it's not a huge deal, but I know it's a bit of a pet peeve for some people. If this is too fast, you can just rewind and pause the video if you want to see a specific colour to compare. Also, a quick look through the paper just to test this, more for me, but to see how much it bled through. It didn't go through to the plastic sheet, even though you can see the colours on the back of the page. Moving on, before I started to demo these and give them a proper go on a final piece, I wanted to play around with the blendability. Honestly, they blend just as well as any other marker. There was really no point me doing a side-by-side comparison. I find all alcohol markers blend really well. So this was more me getting to grips, testing some specific colours out and making notes for what I wanted to use. One thing you will see me do a lot on this bit is going back to a zero colourless blender and trying to actually blend the colours out onto the white paper. I'm mentioning this because that was the biggest thing for me. As mentioned before, I would have liked some paler colours so that I could sort of transition into the white page. I found that really tricky to do, and I would have expected that to be easy with a pastel set. So a good example of what I think they could have done to improve this was, if you're familiar with the Copic color range, for example, they have like a cool grey range 1 to 12 or whatever it is, but they also have a cool grey 0, and that one is perfect for transitioning between the lighter colours and the white of the page. It's just a more dilute down ink, but I think that it comes in real handy. I won't go through all of the different things on this page, but I was just trying different transitions, how well different colours worked, and that purple one in the middle was just to show how much you can layer up a single colour to get different tonal ranges. So just an easy way to get a little bit darker tones with, but again, lighter tones I found a little bit trickier to fade out to nothing. So that's my testing sheet of experiments with the colour codes written down to make it easier for me in a moment when I try a finished piece. I have already sketched something out here off camera, so I won't waste too much time showing this stage. This is just me inking it, but the pens that I'm using here are marker proof. In fact, they are actually the Ohuhu fine liners. I figured they'd be quite fitting for this video. I have already made a video reviewing these in more detail, so I'll put links in the description box below to that. Definitely check those out. They are fantastic and they're a good price as well. Obviously, the main advantage is that you can use these with alcohol markers, you can blend over them or anything like that, and it doesn't smudge them or mucky the tip of your marker. Honestly, the colours probably would have looked even more pastel in this final image if I didn't use black ink, but I need them for covering up some of my mistakes and making my work a little bit neater. So now moving on to actually applying some markers to the main image itself. Before I forget though, I just wanted to show you can fit the caps onto the back of the other caps like shown there. A lot of markers don't have that, but it's actually really handy. And although I do have my test sheet next to me so that I can see which colours to use, I did end up winging it a little bit, so it didn't turn out as good as it could have done. I did struggle because I'm not the best with markers by any means. So basically I started out with a purple and blue. Originally I was planning on using one for lighter areas and one for shadows. I ended up thinking that the blue and purple blended together quite well, almost like a pearlescent effect that you get on some cars. So because of that, I decided I'd do random patches and hope to achieve this effect. I don't think it really worked as well as I was hoping. You will see that I also couldn't settle on what colours to use for like different parts of the dragon, so its horns, its wings, its chest. I did take a bit of a gamble and I picked some colours that blended well. It might have looked better with different colours, I'm not sure. By the way, I'll stick some links below to my social media pages in case you want to check out more of my art. But let's talk a little bit more about the markers. So the markers here are part of the Honolulu series, if that's how you pronounce it. That means these ones have a brush at one side and a chisel nib at the other, as we saw earlier. But there is also a Honolulu B series, and that has a brush and a fine nib to replace the chisel, which personally I think is pretty cool, but I know a lot of people do actually use the chisels. And then there are also many other different combinations or ranges on their website, some with a much wider chisel nib, and they also have a tri-tip, which is a sort of variation of the chisel nib that allows for thinner and thicker lines, amongst other things. I won't go into too much detail about those because I haven't tested them, and if there's any interest, again, I'll make another video reviewing them in the future. On the Ohuhu website, I can see that their markers are available in a range of 320 colours, so it is a very large range. Obviously you don't need all of the markers, but they are available in smaller sets like this one, this being the pastel set of 48 markers, and also things like a skin tone set of 36 markers. Again, that's one I definitely want to get my hands on soon. Now, as for prices, this is where Ohuhu are definitely very well known because they can compete with some of the top markers like Copic, but at only a fraction of the price. At the time of me making this video, the 48 pastel marker set I have here is actually on offer for $39.99 US on the Ohuhu website. Of course, that will likely go back up to $45 again soon. But the prices really do vary depending on which sets you get. So obviously the more in a set, the cheaper they seem to be. So the full set of 320 markers would cost you about $245, again at the time of me recording this. As always, I will put links to everything in the description box below to the cheapest place I could find these, but it's going to cost you more if you buy the markers individually. That being said, generally speaking, if you're buying these in one of the sets, they seem to work out at less than $1 US per marker, which is incredibly good. Now, considering they seem to be just as good as Copic markers, or at least to the average non-marker expert like myself, then that's incredibly cheap compared to paying, I don't know how much they are in America, I would guess at least $5 to $8 for a Copic Sketch, maybe $5 for a Copic Ciao. Again, they're going to range massively depending if they're individual or part of a set. I am in the UK, but from my experience, the Copic Sketch are closer to like £5 to £8 each, and the Copic Ciao probably around £3.50, £4 each. That would be in comparison with these Ohuhu markers being about 80p, let's say. That's very rough off the top of my head. There's going to be a huge variation, but I think you can see the difference from that. By the way, that's how it was looking finished with just the markers. It didn't have many darker tones, and it wasn't looking like it had enough shading to me. So this next bit of footage, I did cheat and just use a little bit of pencil colours to darken some bits, and also a white Jelly Roll pen just to add some highlights. Another thing that comes up a lot with alcohol markers, are they refillable? Technically, I'm pretty sure that any alcohol marker is refillable. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it's more down to whether or not you can get hold of the right ink. So as far as I'm aware, Copic are one of the few big brand markers that actually sell ink refills. However, you can buy individual markers from Ohuhu. Yes, it's going to work out more expensive. It's going to work out like $2.50 each. I've been put off by a lot of different marker brands in the past where you cannot buy the markers individually, so you have to buy an entire set if one of your markers dries out. So for me, that's quite a big thing. Remember guys, this is just my opinion and I'm not an expert with markers. In fact, I don't have that much experience with them at all. But if you have the opportunity to get these, I definitely would buy Ohuhu markers. But please do share your experience and your opinion in the comments below. Hopefully I covered everything here and the video was somewhat useful. If it was, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up button for more content.